Hello, welcome to the last session of today's breakout sessions. My name is Carmen Hill. I'll be moderating the track. I'm an independent content strategist and writer. My consultancy is Chill Content. And I am delighted to introduce our next speaker, Gynn. She is a managing editor of The Tilt. She's been in the lexicon linguistics business almost all her life, earning the nickname Editor Ann in high school. Yes, she's always been a geek of sorts. Now she serves as managing editor of The Tilt. She also speaks, consults, and helps personal and business brands up their content games. Welcome, Ann.
Thank you. Thank you. And here's the note of interesting facts about my life or non-interesting facts. This is the place where my prom was many years ago. So it's that full circle, really weird moment. And I have to say, I'm better dressed today. It was the late 80s, so you can understand. I'm thankful, and actually you should all give yourselves, let's just take a second to give yourselves a round of applause that you made it to the 5 o'clock session and you're still here. So thank you very much for coming. I think you'll find this useful. That's exactly why I want to do it, is to make it useful to you. We're going to go through 7 steps. That's the only fancy part because I am a word person, so the rest of this will not get from that. So we're going to do 7 steps to create a one-page strategy from that. So you can start thinking about it, and that's what, if you have any energy left to think, if you can think about it as you're going through this. If you have questions, we can take them during and after. There'll be time for it. So let's get started. So why should you create a strategy, a marketing strategy for your content business from that? The why is fairly simple. If you document it, so that's why I want you to write it down, whether it's today, the template, I have a link to the template at the end. 414% more likely to report success if it's written down. That was a co-schedule research with marketers. The last one is that you'll use it. So I have done different strategies, and what they come in, right, I've had people send it to me or give them to me, and I've done them myself. And it has the thud factor, right? You drop it on the table, and there's a thud. And everybody's like, wow, that's impressive. It makes noise because it's that thick. I want you to make noise differently with your marketing strategy, and I want you to have an impact. So that's where I go with a one page to come through. It doesn't mean that it takes no research or anything to do. It means that you have guidance and you can reference it, and it's easier if you need to memorize it, but you all have something easy. If you are working and bring in contractors or employees onto your team, it's their guidance too to understand everything. And I chuckle at these surveys when they say, yes, I have a strategy, but it's undocumented. I would say you don't have a strategy. If it's undocumented, everybody's got it in their own mind what it could be. And hopefully you're on the right track, but you might not be. The thing that's different for you as a content entrepreneur is your business is content. So there's a hard line, well, actually there's a softer line, I should say, between content for marketing and content for as your product to do that. The great thing about this is that you are creating content as your product, and that can be used in your marketing, and you don't have to start from scratch on it. But I really think that we get into this habit of creating content for our products, and we don't think about it as content for our marketing. So that's where I'd also like to think about as you're doing your strategy, is really to think about content for a marketing purpose. And as I said, you already have a great leg up because you have content for your business and from that. So I said 7 steps. We're going to get to step 1, and we're going to go through this at a good pace. But if you do have questions as I'm talking about something or from that, just raise your hand, and we'll have our roving mic. She'll have to do some more work. The first step is what's your business, right? What's your business objectives and goals from that? Why does your business exist? Now, there was some conversation earlier of you have to start with the audience. I don't disagree that the audience is a component of this. So you can't take one step and then just forget the rest of the steps. But you're there for a reason, right? You have a goal, whether it's a personal goal, but your business should have a goal and objective. sometimes when you get into it, I don't know if anybody's ever been in marketing and had clients where you get in and they need a marketing strategy, but they have no business goals or objectives. It's really hard to do marketing if you don't know what you're trying to go for. So what are your business objectives and goals? How do you measure business success from that? It could be a dollar amount. It could be revenue from an online course. So we're going to go through an example today called WealthWise. All transparency, I did a logo with AI for WealthWise. That's how you get the art to come along. So WealthWise is their business objective, and you can see there's no numbers put to the objective. It's to increase the belief that WealthWise is a good source for personal financial education. So pretty broad, but personal finance education. That's what they're in business to do from that. The business goal, and for simplicity's purposes, I'm just doing one goal in this, is to increase revenue from online course sales by 20% year over year. If you were just starting out in business, you're like, well, how? I don't have a year past. How do I do this? I recommend starting with some number. You don't have to marry to it. The great thing about being an entrepreneur starting up, there's no board to report to or boss to report to say, I missed my numbers. But get a number in there so you start thinking about how you quantify success from that. And then you can adjust and say, well, that wasn't realistic. I overshot it or I underdid, and you can figure it out. But the step one is figuring out what's in it, what's the business in it, what's in it for the business, and what you're in business for. Step two is the real piece that you really need to spend some time on. So it is, who is the audience and who are they really? I'm going to explain the difference. We look at demographics, psychographics, interests, consumer behaviors, content consumption habits, what platforms are they on? Sometimes demographics make a difference from that. If you are, Bernie's not in here, but the Midlife Fulfilled podcast, there's an age associated with it, over 40 from it. So age is important to that. Sometimes it's not from that. So you have to think about what characteristics of your audience are important and get into that. So if I said, who is your audience? We would say people who are interested in personal finance, right, from our wealth example. But who would be most interested in an online personal finance course, right? So we've taken it from our audience are people who are interested in personal finance and want to improve their finances to a much more specific who would be most interested, and then the last part of it, and most likely to pay for it. So who is that audience who's going to think about, oh, I should take a course in personal finance, and I'm going to pay for it. There's a lot of content out there that's free. So you have to think about who's willing to pay, and you also obviously have to give them a content product that's worth paying for. But who was it this afternoon that somebody had the example, it was podcasting of kids on their parents' couch after college from that. If you're doing a podcast for them, they're probably not going to pay for your podcast. You probably are going to look at advertising. So think about who has money to generate this. This doesn't have to be a ton of money, but that they're willing to invest in something. So we go back to our example, adults working a full-time job, so they have money. Now we're narrowing down the picture of it. So it's with at least one young child, and here are the details. They oversee the family's budget. They have a savings account. So that speaks to a different level of personal finance than somebody who's trying to make rent, right? Expecting the family's financial needs to evolve quickly for living and transportation arrangements. So that's why it's a young child. They're going to need maybe more space. They're going to have to get a car in a few years, whatever from that. They're interested in but not ready to save for their child's education, and they're crunched for time in all aspects of their life. Does it paint a picture? Does anybody relate to it from that to come through? So with the audience, you really do want to paint a picture so that you can see, and anyone who comes working for you and on your team can see who that person is. If you're interested in marketing and you get into personas and all that, that's great, and you can create a whole persona. We won't get into that today because this is your one-page strategy, and I want you to get through it, before you get stuck in some one thing that you go down the rabbit hole in. There are things, what would you not need to care? An adult working full-time job with at least one child, what would be something about this adult that we wouldn't care that isn't relevant? Can anybody think of something that to personal finance education? In a bowling league. Good. Right? Does it matter that they bowl? No. So you don't need to do the full, who is this person, what motivates them every minute of the day, but you do need to understand, hey, they're crunched for time, right? So crunched for time speaks to shorter content. It may speak to on-demand content. They can't join your course live from it. All of that information helps you develop your products, but it also develops your marketing and understanding where they are. So the audience is where you need to spend on it. Who's your audience? Who are they really? And it really is 2 questions to get through. Now we're going to get into the marketing objectives and connect the audience and the business from that. So we know who our audience is. We know we want them to increase. We want them to purchase online courses. This is part 1, so there aren't numbers, but we'll kind of talk about what are your marketing objectives? What do you need to do to help your business achieve its business goals from that? That's what the marketing component is. It's not just to sell stuff. It's how do you help them achieve the business goal? Because this is a marketing strategy, not specific to a sales strategy to come through. So if you go through of setting what's your objective for this audience, there are 3 broad categories in this of general awareness. Do you want them to, they've never heard of you, right? That's a different level of communicating to them if they've never heard of you. You want them to accept you. And that's not like, yes, I accept you and I believe you. It's accepting that you exist and that you can provide a service or something that they need. Sometimes you refer to it as belief, but I kept it the alliteration and I'm partial to A's. So what do they accept you as a resource provider from that? It could be trust, could be part of this level, but at least they accept and acknowledge you. They know about you and they believe that you provide something that they might want. The last step is really where we all want to go, is we want the audience to take action, right? We want them to buy our product. We want them to sign up for our newsletter from that. But you can't get to action, and this is where the challenge comes. You can't get to action if they don't know who you are, if they don't believe that you're willing to provide something of value to them. So often where I see particularly startup businesses go is they want to go to action because they want to sell something, and that's great, but your audience isn't ready to take that trip. You may get somebody in the audience to pay, and more power to you. Doesn't mean you shouldn't have something for sale. It just means your marketing is not motivating at that moment for them to buy. You've got to get them aware of you. And we've all done online shopping probably, where you see an ad, you're like, oh, I see this couch, this company selling a couch. I then look up and I accept that they're a trusted provider of couches. Can you tell what I've been looking for lately? And AI, I have to say, total aside, generative AI in Google search, you just say, what is the reviews of this company say? And then you get a ranking out of 5. I'm like, oh, yeah, because Facebook ads, not so much of trusting. So do you accept it and then taking action? It can happen quickly, but your marketing's got to figure out which level are you targeting first, because otherwise your messaging, and we're going to talk about that in a second, can be all over the place when it comes in. So for our example, the target audience accepts WealthWise as a valuable resource to learn more about personal finance. I'm making it very simple here for the exercise to come through, but we're just at the acceptance stage, so they have to know we exist to come through. 4 gets to your key messages. So what would attract your audience? What would attract the audience? What messages? And these are, at this point, you're just working on very broad messaging. It's not the specific tagline or the specific ad. You're not designing that at this moment. What are the broad messages under which you're going to craft your marketing to come through? And I think it helps with the example. So in our example, we need messages that are going to get them to accept us as a valuable resource, or WealthWise from that. So here are some belief statements that come through. This WealthWise creates content that can help me manage my family's finances. It's a business that that provides factually correct information that I can trust. It's available on demand, so I can access it at my convenience. And it's an educationally focused small business, not a big brand selling financial services. If you think about back to our audience, right, our adult with young children, those are important things. My family's finances, that this is educational content that they're going to provide. I can trust them to do that. It's on demand. We talked about the time crunch. It's an educationally focused small business, not a big brand selling financial services. That's a good distinguishing factor. What's different about your content business compared to other content businesses or content competitors? Because that's sometimes with content, you have content competitors that may not be directly selling what you're selling. And you have to think about that too. So your content competitors as well as your business competitors. What's the differentiator? That comes through in the messaging, but the messaging is always focused on what the audience is. You need the audience to think, what you're trying to push them, and it has to relate to who the audience is from that. I'm going to pause because we're 4 steps. Questions on business objectives. This won't be your last time, but business objectives, audience, marketing objectives, and message. Does it seem easy? I know it's the end of the day from that. This is the thing of like, you should be able to sit down if you took an hour or 2 and kind of crank it out and then go back and refine it. So it should know it.
Can you explain what you meant by content for marketing versus content for products?
Yes. Good question from that. So content for marketing would be a free newsletter from that. Let's say a free newsletter. Content product would be a paid newsletter where you're earning revenue. Somebody can buy your product for that. The free newsletter, that's really just marketing to come in there to get them to elevate to buy your paid product. So, or you may have a newsletter and it would be an online course, right? The newsletter is the marketing part. It is not your content product from it. And that's where I think it gets tricky. Does that make sense? If I explain it that way? It gets tricky because, and a lot of people here are also content marketing from it, but there's a difference when you're talking about what's the purpose, right? So if I have a free newsletter from that, the Tilt's actually an example. Of the Tilt, we send the Tilt out twice a week. It is a marketing tool, but it provides, hopefully, people think it provides good content, valuable content to what they need. Ultimately, some of those people are going to be here. They're going to pay to come to CEX, and we've experimented with different models over the year, but CEX is the thing, or they may become clients of Tilt Publishing. So the newsletter itself is not the content product that we're selling. There's other things that are being sold. The newsletter is the marketing tool from it to come through. So if you think about it, ads, if you're doing Facebook ads or sponsored posts and all that, those are content that's for marketing as opposed to your content product from that. Like I said, there's good thing because there's some overlap, but what I find is that content entrepreneurs do the content and they kind of use some channels for it, but they don't think of it as, they don't distinguish between marketing and their product from that, and it all blends. And that's okay until it's not. As long as it's working, that's great, but if you don't have your marketing strategy, you're kind of all over the place, usually. Or when we talk, how many people have heard from anybody at this place about rented land, right? Social media, you do not control it. We talked this morning about that, the social media channels from that kind of thing. Social media can be a great marketing tool. It is probably not the best place to build your content product business. So if you have a community, a paid community, a Facebook group might not be the best way because Facebook is controlling that and you don't have access to them later. But Facebook could be a great place to advertise for the community, to post content that would attract people who might be interested in the community. And so that's when we're talking about content for marketing versus your content product. That's a good question. Thank you. Other for now? 5 is how are you going to translate these messages? Translate's a big word for really how are you going to do it? What forms does it take? And you're going to start to see what I was kind of talking about from that. What tactics are you going to use for marketing to come through? There's lots of options, and there's so many vast resources out there and opportunities and channels that you can do. Obviously, you need to know where your audience is and what channels and things that they're on. Are they people who are going to read a blog, or are they people who prefer video from that? Is that how they prefer, how they would receive messages, the messages that you're trying to convey from that? So how would your audience most likely to consume it is what I'm talking about. What's their behavior? But here's the part that I think when your people are drawing up marketing strategies, they forget. What are the resources? What are the available resources? And for many of you, how many of you are a single person business from that? Right, so if you're a single person business, that's you. You have a lot of responsibilities to do. Marketing should be one of them, and it should take up a good chunk of your time because that's how you propel the business. But you have to be realistic about your available resources. I was in a session earlier where they were talking about frequency, but is frequency over consistency? Consistency matters, and I'm an advocate of picking what you can reasonably do. Figure out what the minimum you could do is. You can always do more. Nobody ever complains that they saw 4 LinkedIn posts in a week and you're only supposed to be doing 2. Right? Your audience doesn't even know how frequently you post. It's funny because while like the newsletter for the Tilt, I know those days are Tuesday and Friday, and my whole week and work schedule is related to those days. And then I hear conversations like, oh, that weekly newsletter, or it comes out on this day. That's to be expected. I'm glad they're reading it. To me, it's really important of what day because I have a schedule and it impacts me. But to the average reader, consumer of your content, they don't care. So, but you have to think about a frequency that you can pull off. And that obviously equates to what tactics to go. So if you're doing a video, might take longer than a newsletter. Or if you're like me, for somebody who's good at video, that would be for me. A video would take longer than a newsletter. But if you're really good at video, a newsletter might take longer from that. So you have to estimate your time. And I have down here, and I'm going to read it because it's hard to see. But we're talking, the example, you can see what I chose. But blogs, ebooks, free courses, they can be webinars, direct mail still exists. Send out notes. I'm a big proponent of trying to get people's addresses and sending them valuable content as a way to stand out from a lot of the other in a digital space to come through there. Media coverage, so this includes public relations, can get into this if you want. Contests and giveaways. Text messaging, I think you're going to see more and more of that. And if you can deliver valuable content, not just the 50% off at the company store, texts that I keep receiving, you're going to stand out from that. But you have to figure out what can I do and what can I do every week, every month, whatever that is, of devoting to your resources. How many people in here track your time with some kind of time tracker? Okay, a few of you. Some of you might be willing. I'm a big believer in time tracking because you always either overestimate or underestimate how long it takes you. I use a free software called Toggle, Toggl. And I track everything I should be honest. I track most everything I do. It's not absolutely everything. To understand how long does it take me to write the newsletter? How long does it take me to produce? Whatever it is, what each step goes into. Because you can say, oh, well, I can do the video. That's probably 3 hours. So, okay, I've got 3 hours in my week and I can do videos and that. But until you take the time to figure out what you're actually spending, it's a little bit unrealistic. But initially get something down and then use your time tracking to see if that's really it to come through and adjust. So it's what the audience wants and what are they going to do, how are their behavior that you're going to address, and then it's how your own behavior. How are you going to take what you can do for marketing from it? Okay. Questions? Does anybody have a designated amount of time that they spend or X% of their schedule they try to devote to marketing from that? One? Okay. Do you find it's, I'm sorry to ask the question, but do you find it helpful? Or what have you found? I guess has anything surprised you in tracking your time?
Well, actually, so I just decided that I would get all my marketing done for the month. I just decided to get all my marketing done for the month in 5 days.
Okay.
So I do all my planning on Monday and then I
I'll repeat it for the,
So I just time block. So I do all my planning on like say Monday, and then Tuesday, if I'm not exhausted from Monday, usually I'll move it to Wednesday, right? And then that's when I'll do all of my stuff, like do my newsletters plan for the month, my social media posts plan for the month, or talk to my person my social media manager, right here, and I'll be like, hey, we gotta do this, yeah. So I'll do all of that. And I only give myself 2 days. So I'm a believer that you fill up the time that you allow. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm like, hey, I'm only going to work 8 hours on this on Monday and 8 hours on Wednesday, that's all I have. And if I run out of time, guess what? That's all I got.
Right.
So that's how I do mine.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, putting and blocking out at certain times and windows from it. Figure out what works best for you, and you may find that changes over a while. And you may also say, hey, I'm not spending enough time on marketing. I need to spend more time on it. Or things are going really well, so now maybe I could spend some of my time creating another product. The key is don't stop marketing, right? You should always be marketing and should always have your strategy and be thinking about your audience and what messages and what you need to be delivering to them to come through. So for our Wealth Wise, they're going to do social media ads, videos, and newsletters from that. Available resources, you see I put social media ads up there, also means money too. What budget do you have that you can spend on marketing from that? Because I'll get people, and sometimes in the old days when I was working with social media clients, they'd say, well, tell me what I get for $1,000, or tell me what I get for $5 a day, kind of thing. That's but it's not okay to start out with money and how much your budget is. You've got to think about, here are my marketing, here's what my total advertising budget is, where is that best spent from that? If you are not adept at videos and you need to contract for services or something like that, or a newsletter, you need to think about your newsletter. You need a platform, a distribution place. It may be MailChimp, it may be ConvertKit, but that costs money to do that. So you need to start. When you talk about resources, I talked about time, but you also need to budget for actual dollars and what's going on the credit card or for the invoice to come through. This is logical. We've chosen our tactics. Where and when will we be distributing these messages? So what platforms will you be on? Some of that, as you can start to see, was dictated by the tactics, but some of them aren't. So what platforms will you use and how frequently you will publish? Again, a lot of this work was done at the tactics stage, but now you're actually putting a calendar together from that. And you'll see, it doesn't mean a specific calendar of saying tomorrow's May 7th and here's what's going for that. This is your overall strategy. It's not the specific day-to-day, here's the content for each ad or each newsletter from that. And I have a whole other one-page strategy if you ever want to do that part of it. But where and when? So where will the audience see the tactics and how frequently will you publish it? This is where you can just make it simple. Like, okay, we're going to do one time daily. This is not effective, but ads one time daily on Facebook. We could do one video a month, but we're going to publish it on the WealthWise channel. So we're not publishing it elsewhere. And we're going to send the newsletter out twice a month to our subscriber database. So now you know who's receiving it or the chances of who's going to see it from that. So you can see that the database, the subscriber database, they've already shown they're aware and they're further along in the acceptance route of coming through. The YouTube channel, that may be both awareness and acceptance. You're proving that you can give information, but they've got to find you first. And Facebook, like the ads, that's an awareness level. So I'm using all these examples to kind of try to illustrate it for you, that you can use multiple marketing objectives, but you really need to stay focused on what's the objective for each tactic that you're doing. And then, this is what 4, 5, and 6 look like in your strategy. So, and when we come to the end, I'll have a full page that you can see what it looks like. But here's where you start splitting it off. So messaging is now specific to the tactic and the objective from it. So, for example, the Facebook ad isn't focusing on getting the audience to believe that you can help them manage their family finances. It's more that you're an educational service, not financial services. We're bringing that message in, and that you provide trustworthy content. Video speaks to available on demand and helping manage family finances. So you can play with it, but what messages are you delivering with that tactic on that channel? Sometimes you may hit all of them, but what I find is if you try to hit all of them, it's all kind of mysterious. People don't really know. I'm supposed to trust them, and it's factually correct. Those two kind of go together from it, but available on demand, that's a different message. So it's kind of hard sometimes to combine everything. The other thing I would hope you can see from this is now you can see what content the newsletter should have. You're focused on those messages. So now you know it makes it easier to create the newsletter or to create the video or to create the ad because you know exactly what direction you're headed. You know what you want the audience to come away with, rather than just saying we want them to be aware of this company's of personal finance provider, education provider from it. It's more specific, and then it helps save you time later by making the messaging, rather than just sitting down and saying, okay, I need to do a Facebook ad, what should we say today from that? You can go back to your guidance on your messages. The step 7, this is the numbers part, but is the marketing effective? Is it doing what we wanted it to do? The way we know that is by numbers, which is both the exciting part of digital, the world, is that you have numbers, but you have a lot of numbers. So what numbers are most meaningful from that? The other part with an objective, when you're putting it together, this is the goal part of it, you put a time frame into it. So remember, going back to the business, it was year over year. So that was a whole year to reach those goals. What's the time frame on which to achieve that number? Because if you say we want to increase newsletter subscribers by 20%, okay, that's not a goal. You got to say what time frame from it, because otherwise you're always just, oh, yep, we could do that next month. We could do that next month from it. So here's with, I brought back our marketing objective that we want them to believe that it's a valuable resource. So here's how we're measuring that. And I'm using examples, both awareness, acceptance, and action from that. You may be sticking to your original one, but I want to illustrate it. So we want to see referral traffic from Facebook increase 15% month over month. That's an awareness goal. We want to increase our YouTube channel subscribers 10% every quarter. Acceptance. Sustain a newsletter open rate of at least 30% week over week. We're back to acceptance. And ultimately, we want to convert 5% of newsletter subscribers and 1% of YouTube subscribers to purchase at least one online course over 6 months. And that's the final goal that ties directly to what the business is seeking. But you have to have all those other goals to get to the purchase from it. So if you just said convert 5% of newsletter subscribers and 1% of YouTube subscribers, if that was your only goal, you're missing out on steps where there could be challenges. So is it your open rate for the newsletter, or is it the click-through rate, right? You need to have these goals for each tactic you have so you can understand what's working and resonating with your audience, as opposed to the last goal. If it's just the last goal for marketing, you don't really know. 1% of YouTube subscribers, like, well, how did they know about YouTube? You know, that kind of thing. So you need to think about it, but put numbers and dates to it, and then figure it out later. And once you have a baseline for this, then you can set more realistic goals for the next time. Like, I like the newsletter one is week over week, you can easily see if you're hitting that, right? And easily start investigating if you're not, because it's weekly. When you go quarterly, that's a little harder from it. But that may be the time that you have to evaluate resources, right? And that's the time you have for measuring. And measuring and analyzing also counts as marketing time. So when you do this, it should all be part of your marketing time to come through. So here's what the one-page strategy for our WealthWise personal financial education services firm that you can see. This is the idea that you get it all in one place from that. Now, if you need to go, I talk about creating a one-page strategy. It's okay if it goes to the back. That's okay. The idea is to keep it small and to keep it something that you're going to remember, because you're going to remember. You can read it every day. Put it up. If you have multiple screens and you are a digital person, put it on one of your screens permanently as you're working throughout the day. If you are a print person, or don't have multiple screens, print it out and put it on the bulletin board from it. It keeps you focused, and it reminds you when all these opportunities come along, and they will. You will have people reaching out as they learn about your business and say, hey, can we hop on a quick call? I've got a great thing for you. Great. Let's have that conversation, but does it relate to my marketing strategy? Does it help me do what I was planning to do? Does it show me a new avenue I might want to consider? But go through this before you're flattered that somebody, and I know this happens from that, you're flattered that somebody's reached out to your business, your little old business that just started, and somebody's offering you a local advertisement in the weekly newspaper. You're like, they validate me. They think I'm worthy of this. That's great. It's always nice to be asked. Doesn't mean you have to say yes from it. So think about that, and you can always it can be your guiding document to come through and make it easy, and then help make everything else easier from your marketing. The last thing is not a step, but it should be. But I'd already written the title that said 7 steps. So schedule time on your calendar to evaluate the progress. So I went back and said, it's month over month, it's quarterly. Well, I know when the quarter's over, so I can put it on my calendar, check YouTube from that. It also means you're not going to constantly check like YouTube, if I'm looking at YouTube numbers, right? There's this temptation to go, oh, I wonder how many I got today. That's fine if you have the time to do it, but that's a curiosity thing, and I find it can affect your psyche of like, nobody subscribed today, it must be awful, and you kind of spin off. If you don't check it until you need to, but you need to check it, it's less of that. So again, figure out what works for you, but put it on the calendar. Once you set the goal, you know the date you need to be checking that. So put it on your calendar, and that way you won't forget from that. So if you have resources or questions, I'm actually starting a content business on Marketing by One, because I'm a big believer in one-page strategies, and I know so many people are solo business people from it. It has the template, so you can just download the template there, and I'm going to be starting a newsletter in June, which now that I've said it publicly, I will have to do it. And then feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. My phone number and at the Tilt also works too. If you actually reply to the Tilt newsletter, if you are a subscriber, you can do that and it will get to me. If you are not a Tilt subscriber, thetilt.com. From it, we come out twice a week for content entrepreneurs and focusing on the business side of things. So.